The rain came down in sheets, cold and relentless, hammering the pavement outside Denver International Airport. It was 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday in late October, the kind of night when most people stayed inside, when the warmth of home felt like the only safe place in the world, but not everyone had a home. Near Gate C-14, tucked between a row of charging stations and a closed coffee kiosk, sat a man. His clothes were worn, his beard was long and tangled, his boots had holes in the soles. A faded military green backpack rested beside him, the only possession he seemed to own. His name was Marcus Webb, and nobody noticed him. Travelers rushed past, dragging rolling suitcases, checking their phones, sipping overpriced lattes. They walked around him like he was furniture, like he was part of the architecture, invisible, but Marcus was used to it. He had been invisible for 7 years. Now what they didn't know, what no one in that airport could have possibly known, was that Marcus Webb had once been one of the most brilliant pilots in the United States. Test pilot for NASA, a man who had flown experimental aircraft at speeds most people couldn't comprehend. A man who had saved 4 astronauts from certain death when a spacecraft malfunctioned during re-entry. But that was a lifetime ago. Tonight, he was just another homeless man trying to stay warm in a public building. Another face society had learned to ignore. Marcus closed his eyes. Let the sounds of the airport wash over him. The announcements, the footsteps, the distant hum of jet engines. In his mind, he was somewhere else. 7 years ago, the sky was black. Not the black of night. The black of space. Marcus Webb sat in the pilot's seat of the Orion X spacecraft. His hands moved across the controls with practiced precision. Outside the window, Earth curved below him. Blue and white and breathtaking. Behind him, 4 astronauts floated in their seats. Dr. Sarah Chen, mission specialist. Commander James Holland, veteran of 3 spaceflights. Lieutenant Mike Torres, engineer. Dr. Rebecca Walsh, biologist. They had been in orbit for 6 days, running experiments, testing new systems, pushing the boundaries of what was possible. Now it was time to come home. Houston, this is Orion X, Marcus said into his headset. We are go for deorbit burn, a voice crackled back.
Copy that, Orion X.
You are cleared for burn in T-2 minutes. Marcus glanced at the panel. Every light was green, every system nominal. He allowed himself a small smile. This was what he lived for. The precision, the control, the dance between man and machine at the edge of the atmosphere. 2 minutes to burn, he announced to his crew. Sarah Chen looked up from her tablet. All systems look good from here, Marcus. Commander Holland nodded. Let's bring her home. Marcus's fingers moved across the controls. Initiating the sequence. 1 minute. Outside, the curvature of Earth seemed to grow larger. The stars above began to fade as they prepared to descend. 30 seconds. Marcus's heart beat steady, calm. He had done this dozens of times in simulations, twice in real missions. This was routine. 15 seconds, and then everything changed. A warning light flashed red. Then another. Then 5 more. An alarm blared. Marcus's eyes widened. Houston, we have a problem. Multiple system failures. Primary thrusters are not responding. Static. Then the voice from Houston, tight with concern. Orion X, we see it. Stand by! But there was no time to stand by. The spacecraft began to spin, slowly at first. Then faster, Sarah screamed. Mike grabbed his armrests. Rebecca's face went pale. Commander Holland's voice cut through the chaos. Marcus, talk to me. Marcus's hands flew across the controls. Trying manual override. Trying backup systems. Trying anything. Nothing worked. The spin accelerated. G-forces pressed them into their seats. The cabin filled with the sound of metal groaning. Marcus's mind raced. If they entered the atmosphere spinning like this, they would burn up. All 5 of them. Gone in seconds. Houston! Marcus shouted. We need options, now! The voice from Houston was grim. Orion X, you need to manually stabilize. Use the RCS thrusters. Marcus's hands were already moving. Firing the reaction control system thrusters. Short bursts. trying to counteract the spin. It wasn't working. They were spinning too fast. Sarah was sobbing. Mike was praying. Rebecca had closed her eyes. Commander Holland looked at Marcus. Their eyes met, and in that moment Marcus saw it. The fear, the acceptance, the belief that this was the end. But Marcus wasn't ready to accept that. He closed his eyes, blocked out the alarms, blocked out the screams, blocked out everything, and he listened to the spacecraft, to the subtle shifts in motion, to the rhythm of the spin. There, he felt it. A tiny window, a fraction of a second where the spin aligned with the thrusters. He opened his eyes. "Hand steady, hold on," he whispered, and then he fired a burst from the left thruster. Exactly 0.3 seconds. Then the right, 0.5 seconds. Then both forward thrusters, 1.2 seconds. The spacecraft shuddered. The spin slowed. Marcus didn't stop. He kept firing, adjusting, compensating, reading the spacecraft like a musician reads sheet music. Slowly, agonizingly slowly, the spin decreased. Rotations per minute. 8, 5, 3, 1. And then it stopped. The spacecraft hung stable, floating, silent except for the sound of 5 people breathing. Sarah was crying. Mike was laughing. Rebecca had her hands over her face. Commander Holland stared at Marcus in disbelief. "How did you—" Marcus didn't answer. His hands were still moving. "Houston, we are stable. Preparing for manual re-entry." The voice from Houston was stunned. "Copy that, Orion X. We didn't think you could do that." Marcus's jaw tightened. "Neither did I." For the next 40 minutes, Marcus flew the spacecraft manually. No autopilot, no computer assistance, just his hands and his instincts. He guided them through the atmosphere, through the heat, through the buffeting winds, and when the parachutes finally deployed, when the spacecraft splashed down in the Pacific Ocean, when the rescue helicopters arrived, all 5 of them were alive. Present-day Marcus opened his eyes. The memory faded. The airport came back into focus. He was on the floor near Gate C-14, not in space. Not a hero, just a homeless man no one saw. He looked down at his hands, the same hands that had saved 4 lives. Now they were calloused, dirty, useless. He pulled his jacket tighter. What they didn't tell you in the news stories was what happened after. The investigation. The endless questions, the scrutiny. NASA had cleared him of any wrongdoing. The system failure had been mechanical, a freak occurrence, nothing he could have prevented. But Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that he had missed something. That if he had been better, faster, smarter, the malfunction never would have happened. So he resigned, walked away from the only thing he had ever loved, and then his wife left him. She couldn't handle the guilt that consumed him. The nightmares, the way he stared at the sky like it was a prison he could never return to. Within a year, he had lost everything. His career, his marriage, his home, his purpose. And so he ended up here, on the floor of an airport, watching planes take off, watching people chase their dreams while his own dreams had burned up on re-entry. A voice pulled him from his thoughts. "Hey, you can't sleep here." Marcus looked up. An airport security guard stood over him. Young guy, early 20s, uncomfortable expression. "I'm not sleeping," Marcus said quietly. "Just resting." "Yeah, well, you can't do that either. This area is for passengers only." Marcus nodded slowly. He had heard this before, dozens of times. He stood up, grabbed his backpack, and started walking. The guard watched him go, then muttered into his radio. "Yeah, I moved him. He's heading toward baggage claim." Marcus walked slowly through the terminal. His feet hurt. His back ached, but he kept moving. Because that's what you did when you had nowhere to go. You kept moving across the terminal. In the VIP lounge reserved for private jet passengers, a very different scene was unfolding. Richard Calloway sat in a leather chair, legs crossed, sipping a glass of whiskey. He was 52 years old. CEO of Callaway Energy, a billion-dollar corporation that owned oil fields across 3 continents. He wore a tailored suit that cost more than most people earned in 6 months. His watch was Swiss. His shoes were Italian. His confidence was bulletproof. Beside him sat his daughter, Emily. She was 16, quiet, always watching. She had her father's sharp eyes, but not his arrogance. Emily had learned early that money didn't buy happiness. It bought comfort. It bought security, but it didn't buy the one thing she wanted most. Her father's attention. Richard was always on his phone, always in a meeting, always chasing the next deal. She had stopped trying to compete with his work years ago. Now she just watched and waited and wondered if he even noticed she was there. Standing near the window, pretending to check his phone, was Daniel Reeves, Richard's personal assistant. Years old, eager to please, desperate to impress his powerful boss. Daniel had worked for Richard for 3 years. 3 years of 18-hour days. 3 years of cancelled plans and missed birthdays. 3 years of telling himself it would pay off eventually. But deep down, he knew the truth. Richard didn't see him as a person. He saw him as a tool, something useful, something replaceable, and Daniel hated himself for accepting it. Richard glanced at his watch and sighed. "Where the hell is the pilot?" Daniel jumped to attention. "He's on his way, sir. Should be here in 10 minutes. Richard scowled. 10 minutes? We were supposed to leave an hour ago. I know, sir. There was traffic. I don't care about traffic, Richard snapped. I pay people to be on time. If he can't do that, I'll find someone who can. Emily looked up from her book. Dad, it's almost midnight. Maybe we should just stay the night and leave in the morning. Richard shot her a look. We have a meeting in Aspen at 8 a.m. We're leaving tonight. Emily said nothing. She had learned long ago that arguing with her father was pointless. She looked out the window. At the rain, at the planes taking off, and she wondered what it would be like to just disappear. To get on one of those planes and never come back. Richard's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen and cursed under his breath. What is it? Daniel asked nervously. The pilot just cancelled. Says he's too sick to fly. Daniel's face went pale. What? But we need to leave tonight. Richard stood up, his jaw tight. Then find me another pilot now. Daniel scrambled, pulling out his phone, dialing numbers, typing frantically. Emily watched him. Watched the panic in his eyes. Watched the way he bent over backward to please her father. She felt sorry for him. 5 minutes passed. Then 10. Finally, Daniel looked up, his face sweaty. Sir, I'm sorry. Every charter pilot in the area is either booked or unavailable. There's a storm moving in and I don't care about the storm. Richard roared. I need a pilot. Several people in the lounge turned to stare. Richard didn't care. Emily closed her book. Dad, maybe this is a sign. Maybe we should just wait. Richard ignored her. He turned to the lounge attendant, a polite woman in her 50s. Do you know anyone who can fly a Gulfstream G650? The woman blinked. Sir, I can ask around, but at this hour, ask around. I'm not paying for ask around. I need results. The woman nodded quickly and hurried away. Richard paced the lounge like a caged animal. Daniel stood frozen, terrified to speak, and Emily sat quietly, watching her father unravel. She had seen this before. When things didn't go his way, when the universe refused to bend to his will, he became someone she didn't recognize, someone cruel. Richard turned to Daniel. Get the plane ready. I'll fly it myself. Daniel's eyes widened. Sir, you can't. You don't have a license. You've only taken a few lessons. I know enough, Richard snapped. I've watched pilots do it 100 times. How hard can it be? Emily stood up. Dad, that's insane. You can't fly a plane. Richard's face turned red. Don't tell me what I can't do, Emily. I didn't build a billion-dollar company by waiting around for other people to solve my problems. Emily's voice was quiet but firm. And you didn't build it by being reckless. For a moment, Richard looked at her. Really looked at her, and Emily thought maybe, just maybe, he would listen. But then his phone buzzed again. He glanced at it, and the moment was gone. We're leaving in 10 minutes, he said coldly. Get your things. Emily's chest tightened. She wanted to scream. She wanted to grab her father and shake him until he saw reason. But she didn't, because she had learned long ago that Richard Calloway only listened to one person. Himself. Outside the VIP lounge, Marcus walked slowly through the baggage claim area. His feet hurt. His head throbbed. He found a bench near the exit and sat down. Through the glass doors, he could see the rain still pouring. Lightning flashed in the distance. He pulled his jacket tighter and closed his eyes, and then he heard it. A voice, loud, angry, echoing through the terminal. "I don't care if it's dangerous. I'll fly the damn plane myself if I have to." Marcus opened his eyes. Across the baggage claim area, near the entrance to the private terminals, stood a man in an expensive suit. He was yelling at a younger man who looked like he might cry. Marcus recognized the type immediately. Wealthy, entitled, used to getting his way. The kind of man who thought money could solve anything. Marcus looked away. Not his problem, but then the man's voice grew louder. "My daughter and I are getting on that plane in 10 minutes, with or without a pilot. Do you understand me?" Marcus's chest tightened. His daughter, he looked again, saw the teenage girl standing behind the angry man, saw the worry in her eyes, the fear, and something inside Marcus shifted. He remembered Sarah Chen, the way she had looked at him in the spacecraft, the terror in her eyes, the belief that she was about to die. He remembered what it felt like to save someone. To matter, Marcus stood up, walked slowly toward the group. The angry man was still yelling when Marcus stopped a few feet away. "Excuse me," Marcus said quietly. Everyone turned. Richard Calloway looked at Marcus like he was looking at a stain on the floor. "What do you want?" Richard snapped. Marcus met his gaze calmly. "I heard you say you need a pilot." Richard blinked. Then he laughed. A short, cruel laugh. "You? You're a pilot?" Marcus nodded. "I am." Richard looked him up and down, at the torn jacket, the dirty boots, the tangled beard, and then he laughed again. Louder this time, Daniel joined in nervously. "Are you serious?" Richard said, his voice dripping with mockery. "You look like you haven't showered in a month. You expect me to believe you can fly a Gulf Stream?" Marcus didn't flinch. "I can fly anything." Richard shook his head, still grinning. "This is priceless. A homeless guy thinks he's a pilot." He turned to Daniel. "Did you hear that? He can fly anything." Daniel laughed again, desperate to stay in his boss's good graces. Emily didn't laugh. She was watching Marcus closely, something about his eyes, the way he stood, the way he didn't shrink under her father's insults. There was something solid about him. "Something real, Dad," she said quietly. "Maybe we should listen to him." Richard waved her off. "Emily, don't be ridiculous. This man probably doesn't even have a driver's license." He turned back to Marcus. "Get lost." "We don't need your help," Marcus nodded slowly. "Understood." He turned to leave, but then he stopped, looked back at Emily. "Miss," he said gently, "if your father tries to fly that plane himself, don't get on it, please." Richard's face turned red. Excuse me?" Marcus met his gaze. "The storm coming in is a Category 3 system. Wind shear at 15,000 feet. Icing conditions above 20,000. If you don't know how to handle that, you'll kill everyone on board." Richard stepped closer, his voice low and dangerous. "Who the hell do you think you are?" Marcus didn't back down. "Someone who knows what he's talking about." For a moment the two men stood face to face, then Richard turned away. "Security! Get this man out of here!" Two guards appeared within seconds. "Sir, we need you to leave," one of them said. Marcus didn't resist. He nodded, adjusted his backpack and walked toward the exit. Emily watched him go. Her stomach twisted. "Dad," she said. "I don't think we should fly tonight." Richard ignored her. "We're leaving in 5 minutes." "Get your things." Emily's hands clenched into fists. She wanted to refuse. She wanted to stand up to him, but fear kept her silent. Fear of disappointing him. Fear of making things worse. So she picked up her bag and followed him to the plane. 20 minutes later, Richard Calloway sat in the cockpit of his private Gulfstream G650. His hands gripped the controls. His heart pounded. The cockpit was smaller than he remembered. More complex. More intimidating. Beside him, Daniel sat frozen in the co-pilot seat. He had never been in a cockpit before. "He had no idea what any of the buttons did, sir," Daniel said, his voice shaking. "Are you sure about this?" Richard's jaw tightened. "We're fine. I've watched pilots do this 100 times. But you've never actually—" "I know what I'm doing," Richard snapped. He didn't, but he couldn't admit that. Not to Daniel, not to Emily, not to himself. In the passenger cabin, Emily sat alone. Her seatbelt was fastened. Her hands were clenched in her lap. She stared out the window at the rain. and the lightning flashing in the distance. She had begged her father not to do this, begged him to wait, begged him to listen to the homeless man, but he hadn't, because Richard Calloway never listened. Emily closed her eyes and prayed. In the cockpit, Richard flipped switches, pushed buttons. The engines roared to life. The sound was deafening, overwhelming. Richard's hands trembled. "See," he said, his voice too loud. "Nothing to it," Daniel forced a smile. But inside he was screaming. Richard reached for the radio. "Tower, this is November 7-5. Charlie Romeo requesting clearance for takeoff." A pause, then a voice crackled back. "November 7-5. Charlie Romeo, be advised. Severe weather moving into the area. We recommend delaying departure until conditions improve." Richard's jaw tightened. "Tower, we're taking off. Acknowledge clearance." Another pause. Longer this time. "November 7-5, Charlie Romeo, clearance granted. Runway 26. Winds gusting to 40 knots. Fly safe," Richard grinned. "Always do." He pushed the throttle forward. The plane began to roll, slowly at first, then faster. The runway lights blurred. The wind howled. Richard's hands were slick with sweat. He pulled back on the yoke, and the plane lifted off the ground. Outside the airport, Marcus sat on a bench under a narrow overhang. The rain had lightened to a drizzle. The wind still howled. He watched the planes take off in the distance, one by one, their lights cutting through the darkness. And then he saw it. A Gulfstream, sleek, white, expensive. It taxied toward the runway. Engines screaming. Marcus stood up. Something was wrong. He didn't know how he knew. He just did. The plane reached the runway, paused, then accelerated. Marcus watched as it lifted off the ground, watched as it climbed higher, higher. The wings wobbled slightly. The ascent was uneven. Marcus's chest tightened. That wasn't a trained pilot. And then the lightning struck, a blinding flash. A crack of thunder so loud it shook the ground. The plane's lights flickered, then went dark. Marcus's breath caught. The plane was in trouble. Inside the cockpit, Richard Calloway screamed. Every screen had gone black, every instrument dead. The engines were still running, but he had no idea where he was. No idea how high. No idea which way was up. What happened? Daniel shouted. "What do we do?" Richard's hands shook on the controls. I don't know." The plane tilted sharply to the left. Richard yanked the yoke, overcorrected. The plane rolled right. In the passenger cabin, Emily was thrown against the window. She screamed. The plane was spinning, falling. Richard pulled the yoke back. Nothing. He pushed it forward. "Still nothing. We're going to crash," Daniel sobbed. "We're going to die." Richard's mind went blank. Panic consumed him, all the arrogance, all the confidence, all the belief that he could do anything. Gone. He was going to die. His daughter was going to die. And it was his fault. "I'm sorry," Richard whispered. "Emily, I'm so sorry." And then through the static, a voice crackled over the radio. "November 7-5, Charlie. Romeo, this is Denver Tower. Do you copy?" Richard grabbed the radio. Yes, I copy. We're in trouble. The instruments are dead. I don't know what to do." He paused, then the voice again, calm, steady, familiar. "Sir, you need to level the aircraft. Pull the yoke back slowly. Count to 3. Then release." Richard's hands were shaking so hard he could barely hold the yoke. I can't." "Yes, you can," the voice said, slowly. "Pull back. 1, 2, 3, release." Richard did as he was told. The plane leveled slightly, still shaking, still falling, but not spinning. "Good," the voice said. "Now reduce throttle to 60%. Richard reached for the throttle. His fingers slipped. Tried again. Pulled it back. The engines quieted. The shaking lessened. "Okay," the voice said. "You're at 12,000 feet. Descending at 800 feet per minute. You need to find a place to land." Richard's voice cracked. "Where? I can't see anything." A long pause. Then the voice spoke again. "Sir, I need you to do exactly as I say. There's a regional airport 15 miles southeast of your position. I'm going to talk you through this." Richard's chest heaved. Who are you?" Another pause. "Someone who knows how to fly." In the passenger cabin, Emily pressed her face against the window. Tears streamed down her cheeks. She recognized the voice. The homeless man, the one her father had mocked, the one who had warned them. He was trying to save them. On the ground, Marcus Webb stood in the Denver Tower control room, a headset pressed to his ears. His hands steady, his mind sharp. The tower supervisor, a man named Carl Mitchell, stood beside him. Carl had been skeptical when Marcus first walked in. A homeless man claiming to be a NASA pilot. But then Marcus had shown him his old credentials, explained the situation, and Carl had seen something in his eyes: desperation, determination, truth. So he had let him in. Now Marcus stared at the radar screen, at the tiny blip representing the Gulf Stream. Falling through the storm, he had done this before. Not exactly this, but close enough. November 75, Charlie, Romeo, Marcus said into the radio. Turn heading 180, slow and steady. In the cockpit, Richard's hands moved mechanically. He turned the yoke. The plane banked gently. Good, Marcus said. You're at 10,000 feet now. Maintain that heading. Richard's voice was barely a whisper. I can't do this. I'm going to kill us. Marcus's voice didn't waver. No, you're not. I won't let that happen. Just listen to my voice. Trust me, Richard's hands trembled. But he held the yoke steady. Behind him, Daniel was hyperventilating. We're all going to die. We're all going to die. Shut up. Richard screamed. Just shut up. Daniel fell silent. Marcus's voice came through the radio again. You're doing great. Just keep that heading. I'm going to walk you through finding the backup instruments. For the next 20 minutes, Marcus guided Richard step by step. How to activate the emergency power. How to read the analog altimeter. How to calculate descent rate without a functioning autopilot. Every instruction was precise. Every word was calm. In the tower, Carl watched in amazement. Who the hell is this guy? He whispered to another controller. The controller shook his head. I don't know. But he's saving their lives. Carl pulled up his computer, typed in Marcus's name, and froze. The screen filled with articles, old news stories, photos of a younger Marcus in a NASA flight suit. Headlines: NASA pilot saves 4 lives in miracle space rescue. Test pilot Marcus Webb hailed as hero after manual re-entry. Astronauts credit Webb's impossible skills for survival. Carl's mouth fell open. He looked at Marcus. Really looked at him, the tangled beard, the worn clothes, the calm, focused eyes. This wasn't just some homeless man. This was a legend. Marcus's eyes never left the radar screen. November 75, Charlie Romeo, you're at 8,000 feet. I need you to reduce speed to 180 knots. Richard's hands fumbled for the throttle. How do I? Look at the panel in front of you. There's a dial on the left side. That's your throttle. Pull it back slowly until the speed indicator reads 180. Richard found it. Pulled. The plane slowed. Good, Marcus said. You're doing good, Richard's voice broke. Why are you helping me? After what I said to you. After how I treated you, Marcus paused. Then he spoke quietly. Because 7 years ago, someone trusted me to save their life. And I did. Tonight, you're trusting me to save yours. That's all that matters. Richard's eyes filled with tears. In the passenger cabin, Emily listened to every word. She thought about her father, about the man he had become, about the man he used to be, and she realized something. He was broken too, just like the homeless man. Just like everyone, he just hid it better. Carl stepped forward. He cleared his throat. Sir, he said to Richard over the radio, this is Tower Supervisor Carl Mitchell. The man guiding you right now is Marcus Webb, former NASA test pilot. He flew the Orion X mission 7 years ago, saved 4 astronauts during a catastrophic malfunction. He's one of the best pilots this country has ever produced. Silence filled the cockpit. Richard's hands went numb. Daniel stared at the radio in shock. Emily pulled out her phone with shaking fingers, typed in Marcus Webb's name, and there it was. Photos, videos, news articles from 7 years ago. A younger man in a crisp uniform, clean-shaven, confident, surrounded by smiling astronauts who owed him their lives. The same eyes, the same voice, the same man her father had called worthless. Emily's chest tightened. Fresh tears spilled down her cheeks, not from fear this time, from shame. In the cockpit, Richard's voice cracked. Mr. Webb, focus on the plane, Marcus said gently. We'll talk later. Right now I need you with me. Richard nodded even though Marcus couldn't see him. Yes, sir. Marcus's voice cut through his thoughts. November 7-5, Charlie Romeo. You're at 6,000 feet. In 2 minutes, you're going to see the runway lights. When you do, I need you to line up with them. Do you understand? Yes, Richard said. Good. Now listen carefully. Landing is the hardest part. But you can do this. I'll be with you the whole way. Richard nodded. Okay, you're at 4,000 feet. Start looking for the lights. Richard's eyes scanned the darkness. Rain hammered the windshield. Lightning flashed, and then he saw them. 2 strips of white light cutting through the storm. I see them. Richard shouted. Perfect, Marcus said. Now turn heading 230, slowly. Line up with those lights. Richard turned the yoke. The plane banked. Too much. Easy, Marcus said. Small movements. You're almost there. Richard adjusted. The plane straightened. Good. You're at 3,000 feet. Reduce speed to 160 knots. Lower your landing gear. Richard's hands fumbled for the lever. Found it. Pulled a mechanical whir. A clunk. Gear is down, Richard said. Perfect. You're at 2,000 feet. Reduce throttle to 40%. Keep that nose steady. Richard's hands were slick with sweat. His vision blurred, but he kept going. In the passenger cabin, Emily gripped her armrests. She wanted to help, wanted to do something, and then she saw it. The emergency manual tucked into the seat pocket in front of her. She grabbed it. Flipped through pages frantically. Landing procedures. Emergency protocols. She pressed the intercom button. Dad, she said, her voice shaking but clear. The manual says at 1,000 feet, you need to ease back on the yoke gradually. Not all at once. Gradual pressure. Richard's chest swelled. His daughter, helping him. Even now. Thank you, Emily, he whispered. Marcus's voice came through again. You're at 1,500 feet. You're almost there. Just a little further. The runway lights grew larger, closer. Richard could see the pavement now. The white lines. The end of the runway. 1,000 feet, Marcus said. Reduce speed to 140. Keep that nose up. Your daughter's right. Gradual pressure on the yoke. Richard pulled the throttle back. The plane slowed. Emily's voice came through the intercom again. Steadier this time. Dad, you can do this. I believe in you. Something broke inside Richard. Something hard and cold that had been there for years. 100 feet, Marcus said. You're doing great. Just glide her in. Richard's heart hammered. His hand shook. 200 feet. Ease back on the yoke. Let her settle. The runway rushed up to meet them. 100 feet. Throttle to 0. Let her glide. Richard pulled the throttle all the way back. The engines went silent. For a moment everything was quiet, and then the wheels touched down, hard. The plane bounced. Slammed down again. Screeched. Richard jammed his foot on the brakes. The plane skidded. Veered left. Then right, Emily screamed. Daniel grabbed anything he could hold, and then it stopped. Richard sat frozen, his hands still on the controls, his chest heaving. Behind him, Emily sobbed. Daniel stared straight ahead, pale as a ghost. The radio crackled. November 7-5, Charlie Romeo, you're on the ground. You're safe. Richard closed his eyes and wept. 30 minutes later, emergency vehicles surrounded the plane. Paramedics checked Emily first. She was shaken, but uninjured. Daniel sat on the tarmac, wrapped in a blanket, still trembling. Richard stood near the plane's wing, staring at the ground. His expensive suit was soaked with sweat. His hands wouldn't stop shaking. Carl Mitchell approached him slowly. Mr. Calloway, he said quietly. You're very lucky to be alive. Richard nodded. He couldn't speak. Carl gestured toward the terminal. The man who saved you is inside. I think you should talk to him. Richard looked up. His eyes were red. Where is he? Control room. The 3rd floor. Richard started walking. Emily fell into step beside him. Neither of them spoke. They rode the elevator in silence. Walked down the hallway. Their footsteps echoing on the linoleum. And then they reached the control room. Marcus stood by the window, his back to them, still wearing the torn jacket, still looking like a man the world had forgotten. But Richard saw him differently now. Richard's throat tightened. Mr. Webb, Marcus turned slowly. His eyes met Richard's. For a long moment neither man spoke. Then Richard took a step forward. His voice broke. I'm sorry. Marcus said nothing. Richard's hands clenched. I'm sorry for what I said, for how I treated you, for being so arrogant that I almost killed my daughter. I'm sorry for—" His voice cracked. He couldn't continue. Emily stepped forward, tears streaming down her face. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for saving us. Thank you for not giving up on us, even when we gave you every reason to." Marcus's expression softened. "I'm just glad you're safe." Richard wiped his eyes. "Why did you help me?" "After everything I said. After I had you thrown out." Marcus looked out the window, at the planes taking off in the distance. "Because I know what it's like to lose everything," he said quietly. "And I know what it's like to believe you're worthless. But I also know that one moment can change everything. One choice, one act of courage." He turned back to Richard. 7 years ago, I lost everything because I couldn't forgive myself for something that wasn't my fault. I walked away from the only thing I loved, and I've been punishing myself ever since." Marcus's voice grew stronger. "But tonight, I remembered something. I remembered that it doesn't matter what you've lost. It doesn't matter where you've been. What matters is what you do when someone needs you." Richard's chest heaved. "I don't know how to thank you." Marcus shook his head. "You don't need to thank me. You need to go home. Hold your daughter, and remember how close you came to losing her." Emily stepped forward. She wrapped her arms around Marcus. He stiffened, surprised, then slowly returned the embrace. "You're not invisible," Emily whispered. "Not to me." Marcus's eyes filled with tears. For the first time in 7 years, he felt it. Purpose, connection, worth. Carl cleared his throat. "Mr. Webb, I made some calls. Your NASA credentials are still valid, and I happen to know several flight schools in the area that would be honored to have you as an instructor." Marcus blinked. "You saved 3 lives tonight," Carl said firmly. "That's not something you walk away from. That's something you build on." Marcus looked down at his hands. The same hands that had saved astronauts. The same hands that had guided a billionaire safely to the ground. Maybe they weren't useless after all. "I'll think about it," Marcus said quietly. Richard stepped forward. "Mr. Webb, I own a private flight academy in Colorado. We train corporate pilots. I would be honored if you would consider working for me. Any salary you want, any schedule you want, whatever you need." Marcus met his gaze. "I don't need your money, Mr. Calloway." Richard's face fell, but Marcus continued. "I do need a second chance, just like you needed one tonight." Richard's eyes widened. "Does that mean—" Marcus nodded slowly. "It means I'll think about it." A smile broke across Richard's face. The first genuine smile Emily had seen in years. 6 months later, the morning sun cut through the windows of Denver Regional Airport. Gate C-14 was busy with travelers, rolling suitcases, checking phones, sipping coffee. A man walked through the terminal. His beard was neatly trimmed now. His clothes were clean. He wore a pilot's uniform, with a Colorado Flight Academy patch on the shoulder. Marcus Webb. He carried a leather briefcase, walked with purpose. People nodded at him as he passed. Some even smiled. He was visible now. Marcus stopped near the window, the same window where he used to sit on the floor, where security guards used to move him along, where he had been invisible. He looked out at the planes taking off, and for the first time in 7 years, he didn't feel the weight of loss. He felt possibility. "Marcus!" He turned. Emily Calloway ran toward him. 70 now, stronger, more confident. She wore a Colorado Flight Academy student uniform. Behind her, Richard walked more slowly. His phone was in his pocket for once. He was smiling. "Ready for your first lesson?" Marcus asked Emily. Emily grinned. "I've been ready for 6 months." Marcus laughed. "Then let's not keep the plane waiting." Richard extended his hand. Marcus shook it. "Thank you," Richard said quietly. "For everything," Marcus nodded. "Thank you for giving me a reason to come back." The 3 of them walked toward the private terminals together, past the gate where Marcus had once been invisible, past the lounge where Richard had once mocked him, past the places where everything had changed. As they walked, Richard spoke. "You know, I started something. A foundation for homeless veterans. We're calling it the Second Chance Initiative. We provide housing, job training, mental health support. We've helped 47 people in 6 months. And it's growing." Marcus stopped. 47 people. Richard nodded. Because of you. Because you showed me that everyone deserves a second chance, no matter where they've been, no matter what they've lost, Emily added. And I volunteer there every weekend, teaching people how to use computers, helping them write resumes. Dad and I both do. Marcus's throat tightened. That's incredible. Richard's voice grew soft. It's what my daughter taught me, that the people who save you are the ones you never see coming. And the least we can do is make sure others see them. Marcus looked at Emily, at Richard, at these two people who had once looked right through him, who now saw him clearer than anyone. Come on, Marcus said, his voice thick with emotion. We have a plane to fly. They walked out onto the tarmac, the Colorado sun warm on their faces. A small Cessna waited near the hangar, polished, perfect, ready. Emily climbed into the co-pilot seat. Marcus took the pilot's seat. Richard stood outside, watching through the window. Marcus showed Emily the controls, explained the instruments, walked her through the pre-flight check. She listened intently, asked questions, soaked in every word. Finally, Marcus started the engine. The propeller roared to life. He looked at Emily. You ready? She nodded. I'm ready, Marcus smiled. Then let's fly. The plane rolled forward, gained speed, and lifted off the ground. Richard watched from below, watched his daughter soar, watched the man he had once mocked become the teacher who would shape her future, and he understood something profound. Wealth couldn't buy wisdom. Success couldn't buy redemption. Power couldn't buy purpose, but humility could. Gratitude could. Second chances could. High above Denver, Marcus guided Emily through her first turn. She gripped the yoke with both hands, her face intense with concentration. Easy, Marcus said. Small movements. Feel the plane. Listen to it. Emily adjusted. The plane banked smoothly. Perfect, Marcus said. Emily looked out the window. At the city below, at the mountains in the distance, at the endless sky above. Marcus, she said, can I ask you something? Of course. That night in the storm, when my dad was panicking, when everything was falling apart, how did you stay so calm? Marcus was quiet for a moment. Then he spoke, because I remembered something my commander once told me. He said, when everything is falling apart, the only thing you can control is yourself. Your hands, your voice, your choices. He looked at Emily. Your father couldn't control the storm. He couldn't control the plane, but I could control my voice. I could control my instructions. I could control my decision to help. And in that moment, that was enough. Emily nodded slowly. Is that why you didn't walk away? When he was cruel to you? Marcus smiled. I walked away once. 7 years ago. I let one mistake define me. I let my guilt become my prison. And I lost everything. His voice grew stronger. But that night I had a choice. I could stay bitter, stay invisible, stay broken, or I could do the one thing I was put on this earth to do, fly, and help others fly. He gestured to the sky around them. This is who I am, Emily, not the man on the floor of the airport, not the man people ignored. This, right here. This is who I've always been. Emily's eyes shimmered. You gave my father a second chance, and you gave me a reason to believe in him again. Marcus's throat tightened. You gave me something too, Emily. You saw me when no one else did. That night in the terminal, when your father was yelling, I saw the way you looked at me, with compassion, not pity. Compassion. That meant more than you'll ever know. They flew in silence for a while, the engine humming, the world peaceful below. Finally, Emily spoke again. I want to be like you someday, a pilot who saves people. Marcus looked at her, this brave, brilliant girl, who had survived her own storm, and come out stronger. You already are, he said softly. You already are. As the sun set over Denver, Marcus guided the plane back to the airport. Emily performed the landing under his watchful eye. The wheels touched down smooth and clean. Richard was waiting on the tarmac. Grinning like a proud father, Emily climbed out of the plane, ran to him. He wrapped her in his arms. How was it? He asked. Dad, it was perfect. I want to do this forever. Richard looked over her shoulder at Marcus, who was securing the plane, moving with practiced precision, a man in his element. Marcus looked up. Their eyes met. Richard mouthed two words. Thank you, Marcus nodded. And in that moment, both men understood they had saved each other. 1 year later, the Second Chance Initiative held its first annual gala. Hundreds of people packed the ballroom, donors, volunteers, success stories. Richard Calloway stood at the podium. Emily beside him. 1 year ago, Richard said, his voice carrying across the room, I was a man who thought he had everything, money, success, power. But I was wrong. I had everything except the thing that mattered most. He paused. Humility. He gestured to the screen behind him. A photo appeared. Marcus Webb in his old NASA uniform, standing beside the Orion X spacecraft. This is Marcus Webb, a hero, a legend, a man who saved 4 astronauts from certain death. And 1 year ago, I looked at this man, this hero, and I saw nothing. Because he was homeless. Because he was invisible to people like me. Richard's voice cracked. And then he saved my life. And my daughter's life. Not because he owed me anything, but because that's who he is. The screen changed. A new photo appeared. Marcus in his instructor uniform, standing with a group of students, smiling. Today, Marcus is the lead flight instructor at Colorado Flight Academy. He's trained 23 pilots in the past year, and he volunteers every week at our Second Chance Initiative, teaching homeless veterans how to rebuild their lives. Applause filled the room. Richard continued. But more than that, Marcus taught me something I'll never forget. He taught me that everyone deserves to be seen, to be heard, to be given a chance, not because of what they have, but because of who they are. Emily stepped forward. My father and I created this foundation because Marcus showed us that second chances change everything. They changed him. They changed us, and we believe they can change the world. The applause grew louder. Richard raised his glass. So tonight we honor all the invisible heroes, all the people society overlooks, all the Marcus Webbs of the world, because they are not invisible. Not anymore. Not if we choose to see them. The crowd rose to their feet, cheering, crying, believing. In the back of the ballroom, Marcus stood quietly. He wasn't wearing a tuxedo, just his uniform. The one that said Colorado Flight Academy. The one that said he mattered. A young man approached him, early 20s, nervous. Mr. Webb? Marcus turned. Yes, my name is James. I'm part of the Second Chance program. I was homeless for 3 years after I got out of the Army, and last month I got my pilot's license. Because of you. Because you believed I could do it. The young man's eyes filled with tears. I just wanted to say thank you for seeing me. Marcus's chest swelled. He shook James's hand. I see you, James, and I'm proud of you. James nodded, unable to speak, then walked away. Marcus watched him go. And he realized something. He wasn't just a pilot anymore. He was a teacher, a mentor, a guide. He was exactly where he was supposed to be. Later that night, Marcus stood outside the venue. The Colorado sky stretched above him, clear and infinite. Stars scattered like diamonds. He thought about the boy he'd been, who dreamed of flying, who wanted to touch the sky. He thought about the astronaut he'd become, who flew higher than most people would ever go, who saved lives in the blackness of space. He thought about the broken man he'd become, who lost everything, who slept on airport floors, who became invisible. And he thought about the man he was now, who had been given a second chance, not because he deserved it, but because someone chose to see him. Marcus looked up at the stars, and he smiled because he understood now. The fall didn't define him. The rise did, and everyone deserves the chance to rise. Sometimes the people who save you are the ones you never see coming. And the greatest tragedy is not falling. It's refusing to help someone else rise. Everyone deserves a second chance. Everyone deserves to be seen. Everyone deserves to fly.